there no cold hands. It's a warm heart. Give me something to hope for, something to believe. Can you tell me you want more for you and me? Give me something to hope for, something to believe. Can you tell me you want more for you and me?
I have a dream today.
Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of Hashtag Lita. My name's Jeff Connor, and I am excited to share with you a conversation between myself and the executive director of Stepping Stone Emergency Housing in Anoka, Minnesota. Some of you may not know that I am a development officer in some of my spare time for Stepping Stone Emergency Housing. I started that back in February of this year. It's been awesome to be a part of this organization and part of helping people who are experiencing a really rough time in their lives and experiencing homelessness. This conversation that follows was between Julie Jeppson and myself. Julie is the executive director at Stepping Stone. She's also on the city council in Blaine, Minnesota, and is just a wonderful human being who really lives out the mission of Stepping Stone. And you'll hear her talk about the 4 pillars that is part of who we are at Stepping Stone. And I just think you're going to see a glimpse of someone who's really making a difference in this world and really embodies the hashtag Lita movement and shows every day how love is the answer. So let's dive into it and get started on this wonderful conversation between Julie Jeppson and myself. Enjoy.
You know, Julie, what I felt on Monday on that staff meeting was a glimpse into your heart, I think. Maybe even more so than what I'd seen, just having it isolated to the issue of people experiencing homelessness. And, we're right in the middle of what's going on here in the Twin Cities of George Floyd dying at the hands of a police officer. Why don't you just tell us, what that staff meeting was about, what made you decide to do it, and what you hope to accomplish with it?
That is a loaded question. So following the murder of George Floyd, I really took it upon myself to just be silent, to just hear what was being said, what was going on, kind of just processing things internally, because clearly right now his murder is so much more than anything has ever been before. And to respect that and to, just really respect that, things needed to be really thought through. And the thought process in getting our staff together, one, we definitely have staff who are of color, and we definitely have residents who are of color. And at the forefront of my mind, I always want to put those with lived experience, usually in the with the idea of homelessness, those who have lived experience with homelessness, we always want to incorporate them into our programming, into our conversations, getting their feedback, making sure we're on the right track, both for our residents and our staff who have lived experience of homelessness. And what really made me think was we've never asked those people of color with lived experience how we're doing. What do we need to improve upon? And regardless of the shade of skin you have, it has been a remarkably emotional week for everyone. And that can't help but seep into your emotionally stressful, heavy job here at the shelter. So we had to name it. We had to call it out. We couldn't dust it under the rug. We couldn't shut the door. We had to face it. And there were people who were raw and real and open. And there were, these are messy, uncomfortable conversations, but these are messy, uncomfortable conversations that have to happen, because if we don't have them, they remain behind that door. Or if you feel not unsafe, but if you feel uncomfortable talking about this stuff, if you don't quite know the right thing to say, so you're just silent, that continues the problems that we've already had. So it was necessary for all of us to come together, even in this COVID world, that we're so isolated and so social distancing. It was so important that we all came together to really be with one another.
Yeah, I was really taken by, at the beginning, it's like you could hear the crickets chirping, right? It was just silence for a lot of it. But then the meeting started to pick up momentum, and it was that momentum and that willingness to start sharing that just turned into this, in my opinion, just a beautiful conversation. And that's what I loved most about it, is that maybe we didn't all agree on everything that was being said, but we sure listened to one another, and got that feedback. And, what was your take kind of on how the meeting progressed and how people responded during the meeting and afterwards? Have you gotten any feedback after that meeting?
I was very, very nervous, because this is a type of conversation that, one, we've never had, and two, you don't know how it's going to go. You don't know how people are going to react. And so even afterwards, I was very, very nervous how people were going to respond. And the response I did get back was incredibly positive. I think people needed to cry. I think people needed to vent. I think people needed to voice the thoughts that have been in their head for the past week or so. So I think overall it was very positive.
Yeah, it's those uncomfortable conversations that, and I think it's fear, right? I think fear drives the silence, because, you and I, talking about this together, I think there's even some fear in that, that you and I being, of this, we hear white privilege, and I struggle sometimes using that, because I know some people will hear that and they immediately feel like they're being pushed up against when they hear that. But it's the reality. It's true. I mean, you and I really we can understand that intellectually, but emotionally, viscerally, we have no idea what it's like to be treated differently, hated, demarginalized, only because of the color, dehumanized only because of the color of our skin. And
that
I think
have zero control over.
Yeah. And we didn't ask to be born the way we've been born any more than a Black person would be. It's what is. And so I think sometimes we shy away, especially in public like this, from having an open and honest communication about this, for fear of what we might step in or, say that might be considered insensitive. But what I found, I had a great conversation this morning with, you heard me, I sent you an email, Bon Shane, about this. And it was an opportunity for he and I to start understanding one another. And that's what I thought was beautiful about that first meeting. And I hope to see maybe even more of those. And it's those types of meetings and that open honesty, the willingness to be vulnerable, no matter what your race, ethnicity, and background is, that willingness to be vulnerable, and then to try to understand that perspective of someone else. I liked what you just said about trying to get the folks who are experiencing homelessness to be part of that conversation, because you and I probably, I know I don't, speaking for me, I have no knowledge of what that's like.
Yeah, no knowledge. And we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should own it, and use it to the benefit of others who don't have the same privilege that we have. You bring up a good point about fear, and it's so interesting to me. We fear this so much, and I kind of think of it as, anything we fear. But if we just deal with it, the fear goes less and less and less. I think people fear public speaking more than death. But the more you speak publicly, the less fearful it becomes. So the more we speak, with people of every ethnicity and every shade of color of skin, the less fear we have and the more open and educated we'll be.
Yeah, when you just said that, I thought of the word, shining a light on things as we have these conversations. It's bringing it out into the light, and we're not having to ignore. I think that's been a big part of, what saddened me is that, this isn't the first time we've been through this collectively as a society, and it's been going on, and what you said about being silent, I think so many of us were trapped in that space of like, what's going on? This is what we learned about back in school that people did in the 1960s, and these riots and things like that. And it just felt like what the last 40 years have been erased, 50 years have been erased in an instant. But it feels different this time. I don't know. Does it feel different to you this time?
I think for us, though, yes, it does. It definitely feels different this time. But I think for us, being in Minneapolis, it has to feel different because it's never been this close to home. And so I think that adds definitely a different dynamic. And not only close to home, the protests have been, in my city. The violence, a car drove into Northtown Mall the other day. So it is very close to home. So this is far more personal than it's ever been.
Yeah, I would agree that, that closeness and just how big it got. We've come maybe a little close to these scenarios, but nothing like this has been. Well, kind of back up just a few, how do you, I heard what you said about, bringing this to the staff meeting. How does all of this kind of fit together with the mission at Stepping Stone?
How do these conversations fit together with the mission of Stepping Stone?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
So actually, ironically enough, I just put a statement out through our social media and our website and doing an email blast because we have 4 pillars that we as an organization stand on. The 4 pillars of empower, respect, collaborate, and steward. Businesses come up with taglines and mission statements and vision statements, but in this case, those 4 pillars could not be marketing terms. They couldn't just be nice words on our website or a printed piece of material. We need to own them and live by them, both at work, in our personal lives, and in our community. So just taking a different look at those 4 pillars and how we use those 4 pillars, again, not just for those with lived experience of homelessness, but those with lived experience of racial tension, confrontation, confusion, and how are we empowering, respecting, collaborating, and being good stewards with all of these collective groups.
I like that. And yeah, empower, respect, collaborate, steward. I know I see that when I come into the shelter. And it's meaningful, it's powerful to see that in the staff meetings, in the daily huddles. I've been involved in a few of those, and you can feel that people in those meetings feel empowered. There's always a very respectful tone, but I love the collaboration too, of how do we solve problems, and then just stewarding those resources, like you said. It's been really amazing for me to watch, and frankly, I'm a little emotionally stirred up right now too, just because all of this is just it's so beautiful, in my opinion. What we do at Stepping Stone, how it all kind of is tying together within the community. I don't know. I'm kind of almost at a loss right now for even, where to go next. Is there anything else that you would like people out there to know about Julie Jeppson, the person, Stepping Stone, how the two of them have, intertwined. And yeah, I guess just kind of more generalized question there.
So I mean, I'm an open book. I'm willing to share anything there is to know about me. And a lot of people do know this story about me. And I love to share it because it's so true. The second day I started at Stepping Stone, I started having some really significant health issues and that was April. And then the following March, I had open heart surgery. So for those 11 months, I went from feeling really, really tired to open heart surgery. And so that was my first year of working with Stepping Stone. And there were countless life lessons, both through my health journey and my Stepping Stone journey. And I look at my life now, pre-Stepping Stone and post-Stepping Stone, because this place literally and figuratively has my heart. I don't, I won't be with this organization forever, but I don't know I don't know who I would be without this place.
Wow. I didn't know that. And it really shines a light too, on how you would develop that emotional kind of feeling towards the organization, as well as all the people whom you serve, because I see you as a true servant leader, the way that you have led the organization, we say these 4 pillars, but I've watched you as you empower people, as you respect people and collaborate. I've heard you talking with the board about how we're stewarding our resources. And it's just been, I don't know if you remember back when you were interviewing me for this job, you asked me, when's the last time you worked for somebody, Jeff? Do you remember that? Yeah, it was a concern of yours, are you going to be able to work for somebody? And I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to. But what I've learned since then is how much I truly enjoy supporting you and what you're doing.
Oh, that's
at
nice.
Stepping Stone. Yeah, I mean, and these aren't just, I'm not, vying for a raise or anything. Care less about that. It's a truth. And I've reflected on that conversation during the interview process many times since then. And then as I've watched you operate and lead, it's been like, this is awesome. Number one, I wouldn't want your job for all the money in the world, because that's not who I am. It's not true to me to lead in the capacity that you lead in. And the capacity that you lead in is huge. And it's just been fun to watch you show up at these things, and then, just get behind whatever it is that you've been doing. And you've been very receptive. That's where the collaboration, I never feel like I can't tell you what's on my mind or make recommendations. But I've really reflected on that and how much I enjoy doing what I'm doing because of who I'm supporting in this. Not, you, but then also our residents and the other staff. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to be in an organization that operates the way that Stepping Stone does, with you and the staff. It just works, doesn't it?
I can't tell you how nice that is to hear today. Thank you.
It's from the heart. I admire what you're doing, how you're doing it, and however I can support and continue to support what we're doing at Stepping Stone is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me you want more for you and me?
I have a dream today.
Wow. Julie, I've had the privilege of working with her now, and I've gotten to know her over a couple of years through my volunteerism at the shelter. And it's just hard to find human beings that embody so much in their actions what they say in their words, and Julie certainly does this. I just find it a privilege, like I said in the podcast, in the conversation with her. It's a privilege to work with her and see the team that she's developed. And I'm just kind of, speechless about this. I wanted to have this conversation with Julie about our staff meeting, the staff meeting that was addressing some of the racial issues that we've seen here in recent weeks because of the murder of George Floyd. And I just thought it was really, really important to put this conversation out there. And I really thank Julie for showing the vulnerability and showing the courage to come on and have this conversation with me. And I want to be clear. I think that these conversations are courageous. You need courage to be able to have these conversations. I don't want the conversation to end here, though. I want to have that conversation with you. If you heard things on this podcast or in any of the episodes of our podcast that you disagree with, that's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. You may be able to give me a new point of view that I haven't considered, and perhaps I can do the same for you. I know regardless, we're going to be better off for having those conversations. So head on over to Facebook. I just am setting up the LIDA group. So do a search. You can always find my homepage at jeff.connor.18 on Facebook, my personal Facebook page, and connect with me there. Also the website, www.litaforlife, that's spelled out LITAFORLIFE.com. So litaforlife.com. Listen to more episodes, comment, please give me reviews. We need reviews. I'd love to get this out there. Share this content with people that you think can get something from it. It's through that type of building of a community. And that's ultimately what I hope to do, is build a community around this idea of LIDA. Love is the answer. I've seen it do too much in my own life. I'm seeing what it's doing to the residents at Stepping Stone Emergency Housing in Anoka. I see what it does to the staff there, what it does to Julie, and what it's doing to me personally. Love is just a beautiful thing, and the more that we can build this community of love and start spreading our message of love, the better impact we're going to have on the world, and the better the world around us is going to become. But it all starts with each one of us individually. So take some action. Go to the Facebook page, join the LIDA group, like my personal page, go to the website. Tell me what guests you'd like to hear. Who would you like to hear me have a conversation with? If you would like to have a conversation with me about love, get in touch with me. Fill out that online form there to contact me and tell me on the website what it is that you'd like to talk about. I am looking for folks of all persuasions who are doing something and have a message of love to spread throughout the world. So that's it. Let's grow this thing together. Please tune in next week. There's going to be another great episode of the #LIDA podcast. I'll also be up, just a reminder, I'll be interviewing Bob Berg, one of the co-authors of The Go-Giver, here next week, and that should be out the last week of June, early July. So look for that. Every week I intend to have new and fresh content for you to look at. We're going to have one more episode next week concerning racism. A lady that I was introduced to named Pam Longfellow. Her and I are going to have a conversation tomorrow morning, and I should be able to get that out to you next week. And I think it's going to be another fascinating look at a little bit different aspect of racism and how it's showing up in our world and where it's come from. We're going to talk about the systemic issues and causes of racism. So tune into that. I think it's going to be real educational and enlightening and help us all. So that's it. Be well, my friends, and go out and love one another.